Rituals are how societies come together. And instead of the society, you can enter organizations, families, soccer teams, right? It's how insert blank come together. So I think it's important to think about rituals as the way that you teach what your organization is about, the way you reinforce the values that are important, the behaviors that are part of those values, and how you live them out. And in the absence of those rituals, those values are just words on a wall.
Hey, it's Nikki Llewellyn Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it. Hey, it's Nikki back on Gut Plus Science, and today I get to spend time with Una Japundza, Chief Revenue Officer of HeyTaco, talking about the power of company rituals. And I am so excited for this conversation because we're in the thick of it at People Forward Network right now. We've been doing rituals, creating these norms for our team, and it's driving connection, driving meaning. It's helping us to scale as a fully remote team, how to consistently feel like we're connected no matter what country. We have team members in 3 different continents, and we're like, man, there's the power here in these rituals. So when we launched our leadership community, it was one of the nuggets we took, and we're like, it works for our team. Let's try this and apply this in our leadership community to drive engagement from the very beginning. So it's a topic that was brought up from Una. And as soon as she said it, I was like, that one. Yep, that's what we're doing. So Una, welcome. Of all topics, why is this one around rituals and traditions so important to you or so relevant for this time of your life?
Thank you, Nikki, and thanks for having me on the podcast. Oh, so many different ways this has been weaved through my life. The first one is through my sports background. I grew up with a mother who was a coach, and she coached boys aged 7 to 14. And there were tons of different things they did daily and weekly and monthly and quarterly to build a team with these boys through elementary and middle school. And at the time, I was just watching it and I thought that's just what you do as a coach. And then fast forward, I played volleyball in college and then I coached volleyball in college. And we did a lot of different things that your coach told you to do. And sometimes it was initiated by us, but they were very meaningful. It was just, this is the playlist we have at the beginning of every game warm up. This is what we do on Fridays. This is what we do before games, right? You have these rituals that are just kind of background of obviousness. So fast forward, decades later, I am at Hey Taco and I joined the team and I'm looking and talking to some of our most avid customers. And the thing that they do so differently is that they have these rituals that are totally on them about recognition that just makes their team blossom. So I just got started into why are these rituals so important and how do you create them? And I went down the rabbit hole of looking at the research and reading books about it. And of course, it's not who I wasn't the one who found out about rituals, but there's so many things out there about how important they are. And they're really not that hard to create. So that's what got me excited about. That's a small thing we can do in our daily lives and with our teams to actually build a great team and a great culture.
Yeah. And it sounds like being able to see into the stories of impact, like what these are doing. You're like, oh, I'm even more inspired, like, because it's transforming how people feel about being connected and on mission with this organization that they're at. One thing that I always pick up on is when someone says they're part of a team, but they say, well, but they are talking about others on their team. Like but what about we? And I feel like rituals really bring us together. Like it's the we thing. It's never we're talking about our company and they, them. It's like this, us, here we are. And it builds more of that. So can't wait to dig into all this. When you think of ritual and tradition, those words, is there a difference for you? Is that one and the same?
There's definitely a difference to me, but the rituals could be part of tradition. So, for example, a tradition is a custom or a belief that's passed down, but a ritual is an action that someone takes on a repeated basis, right? So, for example, Thanksgiving, right? We have Thanksgiving dinner and holiday once a year, but a ritual could be the whole family watches the Lions football game, or we all make the pies together every single year. It's an action that the family takes to reinforce the tradition. Or the classic example of getting married is a tradition, right? It's part of our culture and our society, but exchanging vows is a ritual. Exchanging rings is a ritual. So I think ritual is more active and it puts more intention in how the person actually lives out the tradition. There's so many different traditions, but we all have different rituals, even when it comes to the same tradition within our families and within our societies.
Oh, that's so good. I was trying to figure out like how do I apply that to what we're doing right now? So I'll give you an example. Every year, our team works for it's one of our biggest employee perks. We close for a minimum of 2 weeks over the holiday. No one's working, so that is a tradition of ours. A ritual is when we come back, we share about all of the things that that break allowed us to do to come back to be our better self around our like a life wheel. That's another it's like a that well, that would be a ritual now that I think about it, but it's a way of self-reflection, all the different areas of our life from our health to our finances and whatever. But what that did, that 2 weeks that we did to like, and it might be I slept, like I got rest, and all of that. So am I hitting the mark here?
I think so. Yeah. I'm by no means I'm a scientific expert, but based on what I know and how I've experienced rituals and traditions, you're on the right track, right? The tradition is we take time off. The ritual is this is what we do during the time off. Imagine all of you were volunteering or all of you
Yeah.
were traveling. Or as you said, we come back and we share back what we did and how this allowed us to replenish as human beings. That's a ritual that's unique to your team. A lot of people take time off during the holidays. It's a pretty standard tradition in a lot of corporate America. But what people do during that time is very unique to individuals and groups.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Okay. Well, I'll share some more examples and get your feedback as we go. But I think you've touched on this really the why behind rituals and traditions. But let's just make sure we're going just a little deeper here on. So we have leaders listening that are like, "Ooh, I'm looking for ways to drive engagement, to build that stronger culture, and the why behind the rituals and traditions that do that." Just let's just level set and make sure we're all on the same page there.
The best definition or explanation of rituals that I've read recently is this sentence that goes, rituals are how societies come together. And instead of the society, you can enter organizations, families, soccer teams, right? It's how insert blank come together. So I think it's important to think about rituals as the way that you teach what your organization is about, the way you reinforce the values that are important, the behaviors that are part of those values, and how you live them out. And in the absence of those rituals, those values are just words on a wall, right? And people don't know what actually is encouraged, what's not encouraged. So, rituals have been part of human societies since the start of the human race, from religious rituals, which were very popular in the old times, to now more secular rituals that are part of our communities, countries, right? Organizations. But they're so important in how do you glue the team together? How do you glue the company together through these intentional acts that are repetitive and they are meaningful. They're rigid, but they can also be flexible, right? It's not just about policies and compliance. You can still adjust. But those are the mechanism by which I think people can bring their teams together.
I love that. Rituals are how societies come together.
Right? It's like you don't need anything more. And now insert organizations, teams, your family. We all have
Exactly.
family rituals, but like whatever group you're a part of, that's how you come together.
Yeah. Well, I'll share a couple of things that we've done for a while as rituals that really work well for our team. And then because it worked well, it's like repeat what works. Here's what we did over with our leadership community that we know anytime you're building a new platform and you're trying to get people to engage, it's like adoption is a challenge, right? Like, how do we have the highest value to be able to pour into them? So, for our team, one is every Monday by, it's not hard and fast, but by midday, noon, all of our team members in a channel on Slack put their prios for the week. We call it the prios channel. And so this is really to illustrate our own individual ownership of our role. We also have a culture code around asking for help, which is like, and we'll volunteer to give help to each other. So we post all of our prios, and then people are reaching out and they're like, "Hey, how can I support you on this? Oh, I talked to this person last week. I see it's on your list. Can you want my notes from that or whatever?" Right. So we post those, and it's like our North Star for the week. We're very intentionally designing our week, each and every one of us, and figuring out how we help each other. Then we have a Slack channel for our team that is called celebrations, and we do celebrations in real time. So we're wrapping up a meeting and we are sharing that celebration, not waiting till like our regular team meeting that opens up the celebrations, but we are having a collection of these things that are coming in all of the time with as much example and story as we can. And it gets everybody fired up. There's emojis all over the place, right? So since those worked really well over on our leadership community, we do a thing called Eat the Frog, like the Brian Tracy, I think that comes from one of his books. What's the one thing this week, leader, that you're going to do that's going to move everything else forward? And then you state it. And then the next week, you're checking back on your Eat the Frog, like, how'd you do? But then what's your next one? So that's kind of that prios one that we do. And then the other one is Winning Wednesdays. So everyone gets an opportunity to share their greatest win, the leaders that are in our community, about like, what's your greatest win, and tell a story about it so that other people can get inspired. And that happens every Wednesday. So those are just a couple that we're doing, but I'd love for you to bring it more to life in the work that you do and any feedback you have for what we're doing.
I love how you adjusted from your team that works together every day to the leadership circle that people have their jobs, right? They're part of this community, but they can share wins every day. That would require a lot of engagement. So you downsize it to once a week, right? You adjust it to your audience and to your team. You kind of have two teams you're managing or two communities. So I love the adjustment. And one thing that stood out when you were talking about the priors, without that ritual, it would be really hard to live the value of support each other. Because if I have no idea what you're working on, how can I support you? Especially in a remote world. We're not just talking over lunch about what you're stuck on, right? So you created a ritual and a mechanism for people to know this is what everyone's working on. You can see it and you might say, hey, Nikki's working on a Facebook ad campaign, just and a random example. Actually, I have some experience, or I just read something about that could be useful. I might reach out to Nikki and say, hey, how can I support you? But in the absence of the priors, how are people going to know what to support others on, right? It's a value, it's a culture code, but I have no idea how to actually live that value. So the ritual helps reinforce it, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that feedback. Maybe share some other examples of the work that you're doing at HeyTaco, or clients you've been inspired by around like favorite rituals that you've seen work really well.
I draw a lot of inspiration, and our customers draw a lot of inspiration from the real world, right? A lot of people are sports fans, right? A lot of people are interested in theater, or they draw inspirations from their own families. Some of my favorite rituals are very much related to sports. Like if you're familiar with the New Zealand All Blacks, the rugby team, and how they do their
No,
warrior dance.
no.
So the rugby team in New Zealand, they're called the All Blacks. If you Google it right now, this dance video would come up as the first thing on probably on your search results. They do a Maori warrior dance called the haka, and they do it in front before every single match. And what it does is it invokes kind of the warrior spirit in them and remembers the past members of the national team, their ancestors and whatnot. And it kind of frightens the team on the other end, right? But it's more about, hey, we're doing this ritual together to get in the state where we're ready to play for something bigger than ourselves, not just this game. We're playing for our ancestor, we're playing for our nation and whatnot. So I just had to share my favorite ritual as you're thinking about that. But what we're seeing at Hey Taco, for example, is so many fun ones. And some of them stretch outside of Hey Taco and recognition. Like, for example, people will celebrate top recognition givers and top recognition receivers on some sort of a cadence, right? And they make it extra fun by creating like custom taco trophies. There was this customer that literally made a taco trophy out of a taco mug and a candlestick and glued them together and used a bronze spray and a silver spray and a gold spray to make them, for the first three spots. And that's what they give to their top recognition sharers and receivers every single quarter.
Oh, wow. That's
Or
so cool.
something as simple as if you're doing the win celebrations every single week, how do you bring it up in a synchronous way and say, let's say you have a team meeting. You're sharing celebrations all week, but on Thursdays you have a team meeting. And maybe you're in charge and you rotate ownership of highlighting the most meaningful, the most fun celebration messages from your channels, right? So now it kind of spotlights the thing that you do asynchronously and gives it even extra meaning, right? So that's an example of a ritual because otherwise it's really easy to forget to share recognition, right? Or yeah, just building the habit is harder, right? But with the ritual, now you're reinforcing, hey, this is actually important. What we do every day is important. And once a week, we're just going to highlight some of those stories. So those are some fun examples of what people do. Like people have even renamed their company offsite, which is kind of like a boring name, company offsite, right? To TacoCon, right? Because they use taco as a token of gratitude. That's how they share thank you. So they just renamed their company offsite TacoCon, and that's their annual internal conference.
Wow. I love it. I love it. And what we name things is so powerful, right? It can provide so much energy and inspiration or not. So just like there's a good takeaway.
So true. So true.
Yeah. So I have to ask this because I don't know this and I feel like some other people have to have this question. Why the name Hey Taco?
Oh, that's a great question, right? It has nothing to do with peer to peer recognition and name. So, with Hey Taco, people give digital tacos as a token of gratitude. It's how you say thank you. The reason why it's tacos is because who hates a taco, right?
Nobody.
No one hates a taco. And when Hey Taco launched 9 years ago, the taco emoji was just new to Slack, which is our first integration. And we're like, we're going to capitalize on that. So thank you to Taco Bell because they urged Slack to add the taco emoji. And then the third reason is food brings people together, right? So we use a taco, and then the company was like, well, how are you going to call this company? So it's like, well, Hey Taco. So the domain was available. It sounded good, and that's how the company came to be, or the company name came to be.
And it's so catchy that like I'm stopping in the middle of the episode. I'm like, can I just ask about where the company name came from? I do that maybe once in every 200 episodes. Like, so there's something really there for how you named your company. That's fantastic. Walk us through, the celebrating people as a ritual and really, how you all do that, how you advise companies that you work with at Hey Taco. Just take us behind the curtain on what that looks like.
Yeah. So with our tool, all the tacos that people give and receive are tracked, right? And there's a leaderboard of tacos given and tacos received. And a lot of people actually everyone has the ability to turn off those leaderboards. So you don't have to have them. A lot of teams are just, they don't care about who has the most tacos or doesn't, right? So they turn them off. But if people leave them on, one thing we always advise is to use the leaderboard to highlight again the top taco givers and the top taco receivers in a particular time frame. Now, one thing we always recommend, and this is regardless if you're using Hey Taco or you're just giving shout outs in a channel, celebrating your givers as much as your receivers is so important because the givers are the ones who are your culture carriers, right? They're the ones who are saying, hey, I see you and you did a great job and I want to recognize it, right? The receivers might be people that, sure, they could be top performers, or they sometimes just happen to work on teams with 30 other people versus an individual who works as an individual contributor reporting to a single manager. So highlighting the givers, always super important. And then one other thing is, I always think about what you celebrate is what you get, right? What you celebrate is what you inspire. So besides highlighting the quantity, it's also highlighting the quality. So that's where pulling different recognition messages and saying, "Hey, Nikki seems to always write the most meaningful message and she really takes the time, and we're going to vote her as our taco quality MVP." And you give someone a t-shirt, or you just create a custom Zoom background to celebrate someone because they always take the time out of their day to write them a very meaningful taco message, right? So you always have to kind of like designing sales compensation, right? If all you celebrate and all you reward is hitting your quota, but not being a good teammate and helping other people get their quota, where you're just going to get people who are very focused on their own goals. So while you're highlighting the quantity, it's important to highlight the quality and focus on other aspects and make recognition meaningful and make it actually become a cultural practice, right? Because the goal is our teams roll like this. We say thank you because that's who we are, not because we use a tool, not because I have a gift card. It's because this is just how we want to be as a team.
Oh, yes. I'm so curious about the tips that you have on how to inspire people to engage in rituals. What have you found there?
Yeah. They definitely have to connect to something that's important to people at an individual level. And the second thing is engage people in creating those rituals. They don't have to be top down, right? As a leader, you can encourage them and say, hey, what would be a fun thing to do at the beginning of the meeting? An icebreaker question, or we share something about our weekend last week. But encourage someone on the side, maybe even in one on one, and say, hey, Nikki, would you mind running the first 5 minutes of the meeting and doing something fun and seeing what works, right? But getting your responsibility and ownership to your team as well. Because if it's top down, then it could be forced fun and then it sucks. No one wants that. It's like we do a ritual, but 40% of company thinks it's just lip service. So it has to be connected to what people really care about. And it has to be connected to what the company is about, right? If it's not embodied, then it's just lip service, it's just performative. And then engaging your teams in creating those rituals but also keeping them alive. Like, for example, one of my previous companies, this is before I even knew peer to peer recognition was like an industry or a category. The first time I joined the weekly meeting, there was a standard agenda, started with what is it called? Announcements. Any new members of the team, announcement. Everyone got a jacket, and the jacket was unique to the employee. So company swag and whatnot, you can give it to your grandmother, but this jacket is yours. And unless you're the employee, no one else is getting that jacket. So, ritual number one, right, when it comes to onboarding, super important. And the second agenda item on the all hands meetings was appreciations. And whoever was emceeing the meeting would say, okay, appreciations. And people would just go up and say, I have an appreciation. And they would share it publicly. So it wasn't the CEO sharing an appreciation. It
Yes.
became a thing that everyone did. And then people would say, hey, thank you to this person for keeping the fridge organized. I really, really appreciate it. Right. But they dissolved that leadership towards everyone. It wasn't just one person who was saying, okay, now we're going to look through our celebrations channel and call out some messages. No, get your teams involved, right? And see what ideas do they have, because you can't design a perfect ritual. You can't design a ritual everyone wants to be part of by sitting in your office and sitting in your room and saying, well, this is what we should be doing from now on.
Yes. Oh, well, this is so helpful and validating. We're trying something right now around member led events in the leadership community. Uh, Member led events. So they get to pick, kind of like when we prep for a podcast, you and I talked about this in this realm. What fires you up? Like, what are you most passionate about? And we find this thing where it's like, it is so meaningful to them. And I think that's a lot of like what you're doing at Hey Taco as well, right? All of the core is meaning. Like, that's got to be there, right? That's like exactly what you're about. And so just going back to like these member led events, that thing that matters so much to them, let alone their ownership in it. It's theirs, right? I think there's a lot of power in that. And then also we're doing with like the Eat the Frog and the Winning Wednesdays, we're right now taking submissions of our members. What would your ritual be or your suggestion? And we're trying to figure out, okay, would they run that? Or, we would run it, but we'd give kudos to them for creating it. So I'm like, I think we're in the right vein here. Good on
I think
track.
so too. And someone might be listening to us right now and be like, but that takes so long. I don't have time to do that. Right. And true, it takes longer than if you were just to say, this is the ritual. Please fall in line. When you try and control, when you try and direct, you get compliance, right? You don't get engagement. When you want to inspire people and empower people and enable them, that's when you get true engagement. Does it take time? Absolutely. But it takes time from, sending someone a direct message and saying, hey, what do you think about doing this or doing that? But that's what leadership is, right? Everything else is management. But leadership is truly trying to get your people engaged and part of the solution, not just passively waiting for you to present the solution.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point for this episode is talking about, the intentionality of the efforts that we're doing, like bringing in Hey Taco into an organization, very intentionally focused to support our strategic goals, right? But it takes time. Like this is not a, hey, we're going to turn this on. And how many times do we think it's like a silver bullet thing? It's like, yeah, but each time with the implementation, making it matter to people, right? That all takes time, like building a relationship. Can you share a little insight there with just it takes time?
It takes time, and the reminder is you're bringing a tool in, regardless of what the tool is, to solve a problem or to create something new. So, what you're actually doing is you're changing human behavior. The tool is just a mechanism that you use to do that, right? You're not bringing a tool in and saying now everything's gonna be magical because Hey Taco can fail miserably and it can be the best thing you've ever tried. It really depends on your attitude, the energy you put into, and whether your people like it. Some people might not like it. Like, that's okay, right? It's not for everyone, but it's a tool. You have to think about what am I trying to accomplish and be patient while putting energy consistently into making that change happen. And changing human behavior is hard. There's no magic tool that's going to work wonders within a month or two, right? It takes persistence, which is hard, but I think when you do it well, when you persist and people come around and say, "Hey, this is actually important to us," the benefits and the return on your time investment are more than you can ever imagine.
Yeah, the sustainability over time, right? When you build it right in the beginning, all those building blocks that make it very meaningful and matter to people. And you've got people, they feel like they own it too. It's theirs, right? Going back to the like ours versus them, right? That kind of thing. It takes a lot up front, but man, the sustainability of like, whoa, when that train gets moving, it's gone, right?
Exactly, exactly.
I would love for you to, I don't know if I could put you on the spot with this really quick, but like a case study story of a company that maybe rituals became a very new thing to them because of Hey Taco and like the platform. And this is just the transformational story of where they were versus what they're doing now. And it's just cool to share.
Yeah. So many fun things. I recently actually recorded case study with a company in Australia, a startup, and they are using HeyTaco across the whole company, but also very much within the engineering team. A lot of how HeyTaco gets adopted is engineering, product, technology organizations. People really love the emoji and the easiness of saying thank you. And what they did is they operated on 2 week sprints and they would give tacos throughout their time, right, throughout their days. But every 2 weeks, they had a sprint retro. And at the end of the 4-hour meeting, demo day, whatever, they would turn on the music for 10 minutes. They were remote, right? So however you share your music on a screen, you turn it on. And they would call it taco love time. And they would send taco messages intentionally during those 10 minutes for things they might have forgotten throughout the 2 weeks. So everyone's thinking and sitting, okay, I didn't give a taco to Nikki for fixing that bug 10 days ago. I got to do it right now. And then the channel just gets flooded
Oh, yeah.
with different recognition messages. And it's really hard to measure, of course, without the right tools, what effect it has on people. Because you would definitely have to measure, brain scans and heart rate, but you have to feel so good, even if you don't get a taco, when you just watch the screen at a company you work with be flooded with people saying thank you and awesome things to each other. I think it's really hard to look at it and be like, that's terrible, or I don't like working here, right?
Yeah.
It's a, you look at
Yeah.
it, you're like, this is amazing. It's
Yeah.
rituals that bring us together, right?
Yes.
That create this kind of weave of our team. You're like, wow, this is amazing, right?
Yeah.
How powerful.
Yeah, to feel connection, to feel connected, to feel meaning, right? Like, yeah, like when you're on a team and you just see like a whole channel lighting up with all of these great things that are energy feeling like they fill your heart. It's like, what else is better than that, right? In so many organizations, it's like you feel like you're on an island, you feel, alone and it's just like just the opposite. It's beautiful. I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially looking at a screen, right? Like you just have this mirror connecting us to each other. But now imagine the screen being filled with positivity, right? From people who are sitting in their chairs in 3 different continents or however many team members you have looking at the same screen. Like how connecting is that? Even though we're in different countries speaking different languages, different time zones, sitting in different chairs, but we're all looking at the same screen filled with recognition.
Now, only if we could just add in the immediate delivery of tacos, like, just to, like, show up at our
We
desk.
haven't cracked that problem yet, but that is definitely something that would make a lot of people happy, right? It's like, "Wait, do I get real tacos for these tacos?" And it definitely makes you hungry for tacos by saying taco all the time.
I'm getting hungry right now. Oh, well, before we go, Una, I wanna hear about your podcast.
Yeah, so at Hey Taco, we host a podcast called Amazing Teams. We're starting recording, season 3 right now, and we interview CEOs, functional area leads, people leaders on what they believe makes an amazing team. Obviously, we're biased. We think gratitude and recognition is one of those ingredients, but we're also not delusional. There's plenty of things that make for an amazing team. So we have fun just learning from others and saying, "Hey, what do they think is the recipe? What do they think are the key ingredients?" And then diving deeper into it so people can listen in. And, sometimes you're struggling with a topic. You're like, this person, how do I learn about creating a culture of feedback, right? How do I learn about helping people become more self aware so they can be coached? Yada, yada, yada. So, Doug, the founder of Hey Taco, and I co host together. So, we have a lot of fun just talking to people from all over the world about what they think makes for an amazing team.
Oh, I love it. We'll link it out in the show notes. So everyone go look for amazing teams in the show notes. I need to give it a listen as well. But I also feel like we have a lot of leaders who would love to listen or be guests. So we
Absolutely.
should follow up
Accepting
on that.
both.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds great. Well, let's head over to our lightning round before we head out of here. And this is our opportunity to learn more about the personal side of Una. It's just like super fun. We always start with the first question that we've been doing since this show started 7.5 years ago, or whatever timeline it is now. Is your favorite book of all time or favorite recent read? If you had to pick one to add to our ever growing recommended reading list, what's your book?
First of all, I'm really curious about the 7 years of data you've collected, and is there a clear winner? That would be a fun kinda,
Ooh.
report out. But My favorite book of all time has to be The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It feels like I've read it almost annually, right? Around New Year's for those holidays, you read it and you look at things you could be doing better, or things you're struggling with, and just get new insights. And every time I read it, inevitably, there's something different that stands out, right? I reread the same words all the time, but you see things when you're ready to see them, right? So you see certain things, you read certain things, you realize, oh, this is the next thing to work on.
Yes. Those core books that it's like you just can't get enough of it. There's always another nugget to pull out, and that's definitely one of them. Okay, so while I'm talking with you here, I just pulled up the images and pictures of Croatia. I was trying to find my pictures from the one time I got to visit there, but I couldn't find them quick enough. So I just Googled some pictures. I'm like, oh my gosh, take me back, take me back. So tell them where you're from in Croatia and like why in the heck you don't live in Croatia right now. I'd have to call you crazy because it's so freaking gorgeous there.
You are definitely not the first one. People, when they find out from there, they're like, Why are you not there?" Right? I grew up in a small coastal town on the North Adriatic coast. So literally, if you take the ferry from Venice, 2 hours later, you land in my hometown. It's the second most popular destination in Croatia. The reason why I ended up here is, college volleyball. I actually was, crazy enough to just come over here and get a volleyball scholarship into the unknown, and I just had a great time. This might sound crazy, but every time I landed in the US after going home for the holidays, whether it was flying through New York or Charlotte or Chicago, it just felt like home, regardless of the city I was in. So I had a great time. I met some of my really good friends here, and I stayed for graduate school, for jobs, and decades later, I'm still here, and very, very happy to be here. But I travel to Croatia frequently, so it's not like I've given it up.
Yeah, yeah. Just have to say jealous over here. I needed to make another trip back. And now I have somebody to get some tips from.
Exactly, absolutely.
Yes.
I always love tips. I have whole lists of tips too, of things to do, places to see, things to eat. That's
Yes.
important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes. Beyond tacos, there are other foods,
There
right?
are other foods for sure.
And okay, so how many languages do you speak currently? And there might be another one on the horizon?
Yeah, when you're from a small country like Croatia with 4 million people and an obscure language that no one speaks, you start learning languages pretty young. Otherwise, you're not even going to get a summer job with the tourists if you can't utter a word of like Italian. So I speak 4 languages in addition to Croatian, obviously English, Italian, and Spanish. I always had the goal of 5. So I think I might re-pick up German in a few years once I'm currently working on my Spanish to get to like a B1, B2 proficiency level. So when I get there, then it might be time for a different one. It's just really fun to be able to speak to people from different cultures and different languages. And it just trains my brain in a way that nothing else does.
Yeah. If I was like your friend sitting with you, like let's say we're in Croatia and you're like talking to these different people and all of a sudden you're in different like I would just be like, I don't even know what she's saying. I would be so captivated. I'd be whoa, just that's incredible to me. So fantastic. And I love the story about why. Like that's so cool. Okay, so tell me the thing that makes you lose track of time. Like this thing is your sweet spot, your jam. This is flow state for you.
It makes me lose track of time, and it's a ritual, my personal ritual, which is I exercise every morning, and sometimes it's running outside. I live in Washington, D.C., so running the monuments or different parts of the city. I can get lost just looking at things around me and enjoying the sunrise or a different angle from seeing a monument. So, exercising, whether it's running or, a track workout, whatever it is, it definitely is my happy place. And if I don't do it every morning, it feels like I didn't take a shower that day. I just feel kinda something's off. So it's definitely a ritual that's become very, very important to me, and those 2 hours that I'm out, they just go by like it's 10 minutes.
Oh, I love that for you. That's so awesome and such a healthy ritual, right? Like that just builds your foundation of you being your best self. Love it. Before we go, Una, the best way to connect with you for listeners who want to know more about you, Hey Taco, rituals, all the things.
Of course. So for HeyTaco, very simple, heytaco.com. I don't think there's any a similar name companies out there. And then for myself, LinkedIn is the best place. Una is my first name. Last name is complicated, which will make you find me very easily, but just Japundza. So feel free to connect or reach out, whether it's HeyTaco or our podcast or wanting to be a guest or just to nerd out about rituals. I'm always curious about what are people doing with their team that seems to do wonders.
Una, thank you so much for joining Gut Plus Science. I loved learning from you today around company rituals and traditions. As I shared with you at People Forward Network, we are working on these. And so you gave me so many new highlights to think about on how we can level up the rituals that we're doing for our team and in our leadership community. Here's my truth you can act on from my conversation with Una today. Rituals are how societies come together. So think about rituals as the consistent action that builds community for your team. Such a people first effort. Rituals as the tool, right? That system that helps to build the relationships that really elicit the collaborations that we want and that connectivity as a team. Love it. I love the tip around spotlight the asynchronous in a synchronous way with rituals. So, rituals are a great way to bring the asynchronous opportunities to life and really drive engagement. And then the third tip that I loved is the reminder that we need to celebrate the givers as much as the receivers. And so, yes, it's great to be able to highlight those people that we are bringing up in the ritual and putting the spotlight on. But all of those people that participate should regularly get rewarded for being a contributor. And so much of the work that HeyTaco does is around doing just that, celebrating regularly and uplifting everyone through rituals and just the power of gamifying and giving kudos to all the people that give of their time to contribute. So, loved it. We'll see you next time. We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.